This video is sponsored by Squarespace.
It's been a revelation in the last 3 years to suddenly discover an art form. Now, imagine you'd spent 40 years not listening to music. You knew it existed, you knew that other people liked it, and you knew it, you'd hear it in a shop, sometimes if you went into a shop, or it was on TV. But then suddenly you walk into a record store and you have all this music in your life and you're thinking about music like that's how it feels. Yeah, my mind has been just completely blown. It's actually quite emotional. Photography is now what I do all the time, it's what I think about all the time. I just have a brand new love. It's extraordinary. Before photography, my obsession was London, I guess. When I first moved here 20 years ago, to get to know London and different areas, I would walk everywhere. You'd go find a neighbourhood I didn't know and just explore, if you will. And when I first moved here, it was a time in my life I didn't necessarily have a lot of money, and museums and galleries in London are generally free to enter. So I would spend a lot of time walking around and going to museums and galleries. I've been as much of a fan of photography as I'm still a fan of paintings or theatre. It was just something. It was never the idea that it would be something that I actually did seemed really alien. I had a phone that had an iPhone. That was it. The whole idea that photography would be an actual thing that I did and that other people might enjoy. It's like going, Paul, you thought about being a painter. Like surely that's an impossible thing. Before I started photography, this is a few years before, I had a customer-facing job, tour guiding wise. Some customers are better than others. you might. So sometimes, and it's hard work at the time, and I would finish my job, and let's say it's winter time, spend all day outside in the freezing cold, and you just be miserable. And it's like the same for everyone, whatever job you're doing. Some days you're just like, oh. And if you live in a big city, So I'd be on my little train home, and rather than just seeing all these people around me or out the window of the train we've put into a station and just going, aren't people awful? Because everyone else had been awful that day, or at least I told myself they were. I would make up little stories about the people I saw, or just find something that I liked about them, about their appearance, how they were acting, absolutely anything. Just look for little details, and it would cheer me up. Rather than just being like, oh, isn't life awful? It would be like, life is awful, but that person had great shoes. So when the time came to think about buying a camera, which was like 3 years ago, so I've been doing this for 3 years now, and then it's like, right, I'm now going to go outside and do this thing, street photography, that I'd read a little bit about. I think that's what set me up for it, doing that, because the rest is just pointing cameras at people. For those that don't know, my gallery work, I take what I think is street photography in museums and galleries here in London. I've tried it once in Paris. I guess people who do not realise that they look like, in some sort of way, the painting that they're stood by. They have to not know that it's going on. It's an accidental thing. So a coincidence in that respect. And it happens more often than you might think. So I bought my camera late January. The day after I bought my camera, so I bought it on eBay. The day after that, I had a notification on my phone saying that a new virus had been detected in Wuhan in China with flu-like symptoms. Do bear in mind that a month before that, I'd bought plane tickets to go to Japan, South Korea, and China to go on holiday later that year. Then my camera arrived, and then like 7 weeks after that was the first lockdown. On day 2 of having a camera, I had to go to the Tate Britain. There I got 2 pictures. Like, day 2 was me, so I'd learned how to switch on the camera by that point. The exposure triangle was an alien language, so it was like very much like auto, like everything was auto. Day 2, I got 2 pictures in the gallery. I was there for 10 minutes. Like, it was just miraculous things were happening around me. And then on day 6, I went to the National Gallery. That was the first time with the camera. And by that point, I'd worked out that I had to try and remember the paintings that I was seeing and the people who were in there. Day 6, I walk into one of the gallery rooms, and there's a group of about 8 women, all wearing like bluey purple and wearing sort of red hats, all together. So it's like this group. It's kind of like an extreme WI, this group. I read about them since. So they're kind of older ladies, generally retired, who meet up and do outings together and then go to the pub. So then seeing them, it was like, painting with red hat, painting with any hat, I need a painting. So then went back through the rooms that they were then likely to be going to, finding one. I found 2, but 1 didn't work. And then the second one they hung around by. Yeah, and it was like day 6. I remember going back to the office straight away. This is all my lunch break. Went back to the office. I was looking at the back of my camera. I was going, that's a good photo, I think. When I get into town, so I live in southeast London, I get a little train and I arrive at Charing Cross Station, which is down the street that way. So when I come in to do street photography, which is generally, you know, around town, I'm not just in museums and galleries all the time, the National Gallery, which is there, is almost the very first building that I encounter. So weirdly, it'll be daft if I didn't pop in. And then do my thing around town. So Leicester Square's behind us, Oxford Street, everything's walkable. And then just before going home and getting my train, go to the National Gallery. Yeah. It'd be kind of daft not to. For me, it's the important thing that yes, in my first week, I had a little bit of, or at least I got some photographs that I still do like, right? In my very first week, right? But the important thing is keep going. I'm all for repetition with this. One of the joys about shooting in museums and galleries, if I go back with no photos, I've just spent an hour or 2 in the National Gallery. What joy that is. I love that stuff. I love that stuff.
We will get back to the video in just a second, but I wanted to quickly share with you today's sponsor, Squarespace. I have personally been using Squarespace for years as the all-in-one place to run my online business. With hundreds of beautiful templates to choose from, creating an online space that feels like your own has never been easier. I use Squarespace to sell my presets, organize and showcase my photography, and have recently shared more personal work with my audience via a weekly newsletter. I cannot recommend Squarespace enough, so why not at least start a free trial and see what you think. After that, when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/Mike Chudley to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Now let's get back to the video.
The people that I really appreciate, the photographers that I appreciate, and I'm not talking about people that are in Magnum and things like that, because the assumption is they're all of a certain level, but the people that I really appreciate are the people that I see out every weekend. We were sat in a cafe having lunch earlier, and a street photographer that we both knew walked past. Because what else would he be doing? It's the street photographer, it's the weekend. If you think of street photographers that you like yourself, they've put the work in. Previous video to this one, if you're watching the full series, and indeed you should, with Dan Baker. Dan is out all the time. all the time. That tiny little stretch on the seafront, or he doesn't go like once a month or something. He's out all the time. Why would you not be out all the time? This is great. This hobby is great. I think people that find it hard to get out, first of all, just keep on doing it. Like if you go out once and you go, "I don't like that," just go out again. Just keep on doing it until it becomes your routine. It very quickly for me became my exercise, lots of my entertainment, and just like if I don't do it, I feel weird. It feels wrong. My girlfriend asks why I'm not doing it. Is everything okay? Yeah, it's the doers. The doers are the big inspiration. But for me, a good photo has more than one thing that I like about it. If someone said, "Hey Paul, what is good about photo A?" I could do a mini list. So it might be the thing that's happening is good, but also the colours are good, the composition is good. There's just something else. Because you have to be careful if, let's say it was a beautiful day, the sun was shining, you had a nice lunch, you're going to do something great later that evening, and then something happens in front of you, and you take that photograph, and you think that's a great photograph. But really, what is great was your lunch was great, the sun on your back was great. So you have to be a little bit careful of that. But there's one I took recently when a guy, I don't know if it's a painting or a drawing, of like a guy's like head, and the guy who's looking at it looks, hopefully, like the person in the painting. That's the clincher, but apart from that, I think there's some like diagonal light coming through, the face is quite angular as well, it's like jaw lines, so it just kind of sits quite nice. So when I first started, it was late January and February, so there wasn't any good light. You know, I remember the very first time that, it wasn't even the sun came out, it was just like a little bit brighter than the gloom that we'd already had. And suddenly I saw like the settings on my camera changed. Like the ISO wasn't 6,400. But the nice thing was, by learning initially how to do street photography without good light, you know, you learn all the good stuff. You learn to look out for moments or for humour, just sort of the humanity that is in the street photography that I like to look at anyway. Whilst if I think that if I'd been spending that time chasing the lights, I would have learned an awful lot less. The sun's gone now, but that's okay. If the sun is out, then you can only really photograph from one side. I know you can do backlit stuff, I don't really like backlit stuff. So this frees up the entirety of the city. And also, if you are only ever going out to photograph when there is good light, whatever the hell that means, what are you going to do this time of year? You're going to stay home, or you're going to get out and do stuff? Get out and do stuff. Spending all your time, hopefully, noticing good things that are happening around you. Little interactions, a glance that one person gives someone else, the way that someone is holding someone else's hands. Two people who are wearing identical outfits and they don't realise, they don't know each other and they walk past each other. They don't know that it's happening. It's almost like a film you're watching, or plays. The idea of street photography is theatre, or the street is theatre, is one I very much like to hold on to. And you're just pressing pause for 0.05 of a second, whatever it might be. And you're finding that moment somehow in it and taking it home. Or even if you miss it, even if your camera isn't ready. Like we were walking around together, not just today, but a few weeks ago, and there were things that we missed. Cameras weren't ready, or the person who, it'd be better if they'd walked past it, actually walked past 2 minutes ago. And it was still a joy just to have witnessed it, or to have it in our heads that such a thing could happen in this world, rather than the other option, which is you just spend your day in central London, walking around, spending money, coming home, feeling a bit sad, and just go in and this play that goes on around you. And it's good for the soul. It really, really is. It's good for your mental health with all the walking. And you know, big cities can grind you down. They really, really can. Oh my word. So All these were bought in the last 3 years, generally in the first 2 years of that. And this was me not spending money in the centre of town during the pandemic, not being able to go to restaurants or pubs and things. You can build up a little library where most things are 30 quid or less. You know, say, oh, don't buy from Amazon. But without Amazon, like, this collection doesn't exist. That's the best Winogrand book you can buy without spending big cash. But yeah, hunky, chunky, massive Winogrand retrospective. So when I first started, it's a little bit different now. There are a couple of other really good things that have been released since. But that one, Street Photographer's Manual. Like, this is a real, like, you've just bought a camera, you know how to switch it on. Like, David Gibson, awesome photographer. But what's great about this one is there are little sections on other photographers. It's not just a how-to, which, you know, is a how-to, but like, oh, there's a little section on Matt Stewart, because he knows Matt Stewart. Bruce Gilden, like, their work is in there. But then for me, the one that led to all of this, 100 photographs, and there's a little essay on each one. From like super early photography to, you know, Winogrand, and he'll explain a little bit about Winogrand. And I'll just read a few a day, 2, 3 a day. Yeah, and I would go through it, and if there was a photographer that I liked, Google the name, and away you go. Find out if they've done other books. Someone you'll find on Instagram. Percy Pissing. Yes, Percy Pissing. So it's an Instagram account. Did his own book. This is self-published last year, maybe year before, and it's him walking his slightly incontinent dog. You go out and do your street photography, and like anyone else, you can be a little bit scared of raising the camera up and what people may think. Imagine what it's like when you're walking your dog and your dog is pissing against something at the same time. So it just goes on and on, pissing against a rainbow, pissing against that, pissing against him. But he posts most days. It's amazing, absolutely amazing. Yeah, it was one of those ones when he announced he was doing a book. It was like, take my money, take it straight away. So maybe it's something you could tell yourself. You're like, oh, should I take that photo? The people might be angry. Go, at least I don't have a small dog that's pissing against them at the same time. Yeah, so later this year, probably October, November, I'm going to release a zine of just the National Gallery work. And it feels daft too. It feels like, what, little old me, but there is a body of work now. For anyone watching this, I think the thing that I would want you to take away from it is find your thing. You might be sat there living in a big city or a small town or a village or the middle of nowhere thinking, oh, it's all well and good for him living in London with all these free blooming museums and all this type of thing. But what's the thing where you live? And something you can do often, you know, this repetition thing. So let's say, yeah, you don't have the National Gallery to go to, but let's say you go to church every Sunday. Sweet talk then, maybe you can take some photographs. You go, oh, but it's not street, I want street photography walking down the road. It's like, well, is Martin Parr street photography? Is it next to street photography? Is he using street photography skills in a documentary style? Because he did a thing all about a church. Or you live in a tiny little town where you feel that people will look at you weirdly because they don't know about street photography. What, you saying that you're the only street photographer in town? Brilliant! Wow! You found your thing. You know, there's no one else in your territory. Your photographs aren't being compared to anyone else's photographs. You're the photographer. You know, street photography doesn't have to be just walking down the road all the time. It can be these things that are adjacent to it, or using those little skills that you might pick up in street photography, or the things that we might enjoy, be it bits of humour or absurdity or juxtapositions, or the sort of humanistic side of it, and people's like beautiful interactions and all this. You know, if you think of the photographers that you really like, and I don't mean on Instagram, I mean like the big photographers, there ain't that many that are doing, you know, walking down Oxford Street in London all the time, or Fifth Avenue in New York. They're doing other stuff. They're finding those little projects and little niches and things.